Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Wishing you all good health and success, no matter where you are. In today's video, we're going to break down an absolutely fantastic chess game, Bobby Fischer versus Now, here's what makes this match really interesting. Maciulovic tries to set a trap for Fischer. The question is, can Fischer see it coming and escape? Let's find out together. But before we jump in, a quick reminder: if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to drop a like and support the channel. It really helps. Alright, let's get into the game. Fischer, playing white, kicks things off with e4, and Maciulovic responds with e5. That takes us straight into the classic Re-Lopez opening. On move 3, Milan Maciulovic, without much hesitation, goes for a bold and provocative move, pushing his f-pawn to f-lima. Right from the early stages of the game, Maciulovic tries to set a trap for Bobby Fischer. But against the Re-Lopez, the most solid and relevant choices would typically be the Morphy defense or the Berlin defense. But of course, Bobby Fischer immediately recognizes this dubious trap. Instead of grabbing the pawn, he calmly develops his knight to nc3, completely ignoring the offer. Now, here's the big question. What are the risks if white actually takes the f5 pawn? At first glance, it looks like a free pawn. But in reality, this move is a blunder. Let's break it down and analyze why. And if black's trap works, they will push the pawn forward to attack the knight. At this point, white has only 4 possible responses, one of them being knight to f3. However, this isn't the best solution. The only real saving move here is to pin the pawn with the queen. Then, black plays queen e7, delivering a serious threat to the knight, which must be handled carefully. A major mistake here would be retreating the knight. That would only put you further behind in the game. Black will keep up the pressure with knight d4, forking both of your pieces. At this point, queen c4 not only escapes the threat but also provides valuable support. But then, queen e5 strikes back, attacking the bishop twice. Once the bishop moves away to safety, pawn b5 comes in, once again forking both of your pieces, forcing you to lose one of them. Of course, in this situation, it is undeniable that defeat awaits the white forces. This clearly shows what I always emphasize. The opening move is key to every move that follows. Now, to extend the game a little, we must first advance the bishop along with the knight, so that your knight can later jump to square d4. After the pawn captures the bishop, knight d4 to f3, then kingside castling. Next, queen c5, attacking both the knight and the pawn. Then pawn c3, followed by pawn a5, planning to move the bishop to a6, rook to s2, but the bishop continues to attack the queen. Once the queen moves away from danger, the bishop advances to d3. Even though we can say that white is up by 1 pawn, all of his pieces are completely stuck, unable to develop. This is exactly what Milan Maciulovic had planned. If Bobby Fischer had accepted the offer, he would have fallen into this position. Now, let's go back to the moment when Bobby Fischer ignored the free pawn. Instead, Milan Maciulovic decided to capture the e4 pawn, and the knight captures back. Now, pay attention, black has lost the f-pawn, a crucial piece for the king's safety. Let's see what happens next. Milan Maciulovic responds with pawn to d5. Then, knight captures the pawn. Milan Maciulovic captures the knight, and Bobby Fischer immediately recaptures with his knight. Here, Milan Maciulovic plays queen g5, attacking both the pawn and the bishop. He hopes that Bobby Fischer will move his bishop back to f1 to support the g2 pawn. But the opposite happens. Bobby Fischer responds with queen e2, completely ignoring the threat to the g2 pawn. Because if Milan Maciulovic gets greedy and captures the g2 pawn, thinking he is attacking the rook, it would be a huge mistake. White would immediately continue with a queen attack on the king. If king moves to d7, the knight delivers a check. And if king moves to d8, black's trap completely collapses. If the king moves to e6, then queen f7 check. If the king captures the knight, the pawn checks again. Black is forced to capture the pawn, but then the bishop delivers another check. And if the king moves to d, black will face a brutal execution on the chessboard, just like justice should be served against corruption. The king moves to e4. Look at this position. The king is now drifting away, as if lost on an island in Africa. Then, bishop captures the pawn with check. King moves to f3, wandering even further, like a traveler stranded in Australia. The bishop delivers another check, forcing the king back to e4, and then pawn to f3. This is a heart-stopping moment. Black has no escape and is doomed to execution. Even if he sacrifices his queen, the black army will still be left hanging, with no hope of survival. Even if black tries to block with a pawn, the result remains the same. Queen delivers a check. If the king moves to d7, the knight jumps back. If the king moves to d8, black will once again taste the harsh reality like being slammed onto solid concrete. If we try knight block in this position, knight captures with check, and threats start appearing from every direction. There is no hope left for black to survive in this game. Now, let's go back to the match between these two players. Realizing this danger, Milan Machulovic decides to play knight to f6. Bobby Fischer responds with pawn to f4. Milan Machulovic captures the pawn, but then pawn to d5, attacking the queen once again. Next, h4, launching an attack on the king to gain tempo. Pawn blocks. And after the queen moves away from danger, bishop to g5, and now threats start appearing from every direction. Milan Machulovic continues by pushing the pawn to attack the bishop. Bobby Fischer first moves to safety, avoiding the threat, then bishop to d7, aiming to escape the pin. Bobby Fischer continues by exchanging the bishop for the knight, followed by the queen capturing the pawn with check. The king moves to f7, preparing to bring the rook to e8. Then knight to e4 attacks the king. Milan Machulovic captures the knight. At this point, Bobby Fischer makes a mistake by moving the rook to attack the king, which actually allows the game to become equal. After analyzing this position multiple times, I found that Bobby Fischer's miscalculation happened here because when the king moved to e6, the e6 square was already controlled. The same sequence happens, but this time there's a difference. The bishop attacks the king because if the king moves to e6, the queen captures the pawn, controlling the e6 square while also threatening the rook. The bishop blots, but the pawn advances, attacking the bishop 3 times. The king moves to d8. Then the pawn captures the bishop, and it's clear that black has no chance of surviving in this position. Now let's go back. If black chooses to block with the bishop, then comes rook check. If the king moves to e7, the same sequence will happen after the pawn advances. I'm sure you already understand, my friend, because we're not kids anymore. So the best move for black is to play king to g8, then pawn to d5, bishop to f7, and pawn to d6, attacking the bishop twice, forcing black to capture the bishop. Then, after the pawn there is now a checkmate threat in just a few moves. Queen to d5, and black is forced to respond seriously. Queen to e6. Then queen captures the pawn, creating pressure on c7. Rook to c8, but then pawn captures. Even though we might say black is ahead of material, on the other hand, the rook on h8 is completely trapped. Even if pawn to h5 is played to open a path for the rook, white will continue by capturing the pawn, attacking the queen. After pawn to d7, rook check, bishop blocks, then rook attacks the queen, queen to e8, queen check, king to h7, and finally rook to d7, giving white an even greater chance of winning. Meanwhile, black can only withstand the storm of pressure coming ahead. Let alone me, even a low-level player would already understand the structure of this position. Now, let's go back to the game. After the king moved to e7, this is where Bobby Fischer realized that the bishop should have gone to b3. First, to control the e6 square. I don't know about your analysis, but if you found something hidden, feel free to share your thoughts. Let's exchange experiences. At this point, Bobby Fischer made a series of mistakes, allowing Milan Matulavic to take the lead in this game. The best move here should have been castling queenside, but Bobby Fischer calculated that Milan Matulavic would respond with a bishop attack on the king, aiming to gain tempo and bring both rooks into the fight. If the king moves, then rook to f8, a move against the flow. But in this position, neither side truly benefits. It's still considered an even game. Of course, Milan Matulavic accepted Bobby Fischer's offer. Once again, Bobby Fischer stuck to his principles, deciding to attack the king with his rook. The idea was to deny Milan Matulavic any tempo, but in reality, Bobby Fischer should have secured his king's position first before launching an attack. However, Milan Matulavic soon made a mistake against Bobby Fischer's attack, which shouldn't have been dangerous. He moved the king to e8, hoping Fischer would capture the pawn and gain tempo to attack both the rook and king. The best move was to block with the bishop, opening the path for both rooks. If white tried castling queenside, then queen to e6, pawn captures check, king to c8, preparing to escape to a7, completely shutting down Fischer's attack. Milan Matulavic would have had a material advantage, but unfortunately, he failed to see this. Let's go back to this position. Bobby Fischer captures the pawn, bishop to d6, but the best move should have been queen to e6, controlling the entire e-file. Rook captures pawn, c8. Then Bobby Fischer castles queenside. Queen captures the pawn, followed by pawn recapturing bishop to e7. At this point, Bobby Fischer launches a ballistic missile. Rook captures the bishop, an incredible discovery. Bobby Fischer's plan was clear. After the king captures, queen check, forcing the king to move up to e6. Then queen check. Again king captures the pawn, and another queen check. King to f6, rook check, king to g6, queen check, king to h6, queen check. King to h5, rook check, king to g4, rook check. And after the king captures the pawn, queen to g4, closes the game. Judgment day has arrived for Milan Matulavic. This is a reminder for us never to try trapping an opponent in the opening phase, because it is a huge mistake if your opponent finds the best response. From our analysis, we saw that Bobby Fischer made several mistakes in the middle game. However, he ended the game with just one mistake from Milan Matulavic. This happened because the opening was already unstable, making it highly sensitive in the long run. With that, I say thank you and see you next time.